All right, everyone. So I'm just gonna give a basically a brief. One second. Just sort of a brief presentation about what we're doing today and what we're making today. So my name is Carmine Guida. I'm a professor at PACE. I teach CS 121, which if you are going to be a CS major, it's one of the first classes you take. And I also teach some of the game programming classes here. I want to give a shout out. Some of my students are here, so shout out to my students who showed up. Thank you. And that's a self-portrait of me. If you have any questions, when we're done, if you are just curious about game development, I'm checking my email a million times a day. So feel free to email me anytime, and I'll help you out. So in this workshop, we're going to be using a game engine known as Unity. And we're going to be doing a little bit of scripting in a language called C#. And I am basically assuming that no one here has programmed at all. If you have programmed, then you will enjoy the very small amount of coding we're doing. But you don't have to know how to program at all. I'll kind of step through things very slowly. And this, if you have programmed, C# is very similar to Java. I think it has everything you like about Java without the things you don't like. If you're curious, some other games that were made with Unity include Pokemon Go, Hearthstone, Super Mario Run, Cuphead, Monument Valley. Beat Saber is a very popular VR game that was made with Unity. Some Rick and Morty games, and there's thousands and thousands more. I believe at least half of the mobile games that you're playing are made with Unity, and that's what we're going to use today. Oops. So I mentioned that we're using the Unity game engine, and I just kind of want to explain what a game engine is and what it does. So a game engine takes care of rendering, that is the drawing of things. It takes care of physics and detecting when things collide with each other. In video games, you want to know if you've landed on a platform. Did you jump onto another thing? So the game engine helps with that sort of thing. There is audio. We're going to have some sound effects and some background music. It helps take care of inputs such as keyboard and mouse input, game controllers, and touch screens. It sometimes provides some networking and multiplayer. Sometimes it might have some basic AI in there for finding paths to things. You'll see that we can load lots of file formats. We're just going to drop in files and it can just open them and start using them. And there's usually some kind of visual editor. So back in the day, in the early days of creating games, you had to do all of these things yourself. But these game engines, they provide a lot of these things for us. We still need to code to make the game be a game, to make it go in some way. But a lot of these things are there for us to use. So we're going to be making a 2D game today. So a 2D game is made from images. We call them sprites usually, and tiles. So on the left, we have a 2D version of what Mario looks like. And on the right, we have a 3D version, which is made from lots of triangles and geometry. So for this workshop, we're going to keep it simple, and we're just going to work with 2D images. And just to kind of show you, in a 3D game, you usually have some sort of perspective look. In our games today for our platformer, everything will have sort of a flat look to it. So we're going to be making a platformer, and we're going to be making a couple of levels for our games. And these levels are made from tile sets and tile maps. So if you look at this original Super Mario Brothers, you'll see that there are all of these individual tiles which are used to build this level. So someone didn't draw, this isn't one huge image. this is actually made from a lot of small images, from a lot of these individual tiles, and we use these tiles to build out our levels. You can see in something like The Legend of Zelda, which is a top-down game, that there are all of these sort of tiles here that make up the door and make up all of the environment. And in A Link to the Past, it's also the same thing. This looks 3D, but these are actually just the artwork is made to look that way. So basically all of these scenes, all of these levels are built from these tiles. And this is a modern example. This is Spelunky. And again, this is a level that's generated procedurally, but again, it's made from these individual tiles. And you can see that the player is about the size of a tile and stuff like that. So if you're wondering what we're making today, I will do a bit of a demo here. Let me, I'm not sure if you're seeing, let me share my entire, here we go. So, sorry about that. So this is, our game's gonna look a little different, but basically here's a very basic platformer. We can run and jump. There is some animation going on. And if you look in the top left, there's a little counter of how many lives we have left. When we get to the end, we're on another level. I did all of this artwork myself. This is why I got into computer science and did not pursue a career in art. But basically, we're gonna lay out some levels. We'll be able to move around and jump. If we fall on the spikes and stuff, it'll reset the level. So this is basically what we're going to be building today. Does anyone have any questions so far? Is everyone cool? Should I take the silence as acceptance of being okay?
Yep.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up Unity Hub. So let me share my screen again. I'll just share my entire desktop. Okay. So I open up Unity Hub and you'll see that there is a list of projects. There's some tutorials and things here you can go through. There's some excellent stuff here. And what you should have done before the workshop is under installs, you needed to install some version of Unity. So what's great is you can install an older version, you can install newer versions or beta versions, but hopefully you should have this all ready to go. So if you go to projects, you'll see that there is a button for new. And if you click on new, you should see 2D. So there's a whole bunch of different templates and stuff you can get. We're going to create a 2D game, and you can name this project Platformer. So what this will do is it will create a new project with what's known as a scene. And this is what Unity looks like. So I will give you just, if your screen does not look like mine and you want it to look like mine, it might be easier to follow along with me if you do that. If you go to Layout and go to Tall on where it says Layout, your layout will look just like mine. Sometimes when you start it up, the windows might be in all different locations. So if you want your screen to match what mine looks like, if you go to Layout and then go to Tall, it'll have this same layout. So I'll give you kind of a little tour about what's going on here. All the way to the left, there's a tab that says Scene. This is where you will drop in sprites and bring in objects and things to build your scene. So you can move things around, you can scale them up and down, rotate them. So in this area is where you will build out that scene. And this white box that you're seeing is what the camera is seeing right now. So for instance, if I was to click where it says game, this is what our game looks like right now. It's just a blue screen. If I was to run this right now, this is our game right now. Not terribly exciting. So the scene tab is where you kind of build things out, and the game tab is where you actually can see and play the game and see what's going on. There are a bunch of tools here that we'll get into in a minute for moving things around, rotating them, and scaling them. And if you look in the center, there is a button for playing. This will run your game. You can then hit play again to stop it. If you want to, you can pause and go frame by frame. And the hierarchy, so I mentioned that we have a scene here. And the hierarchy is everything that's in our world right now. So if we had a player and some trees and some enemies, there would be a list here of everything that's in our game. So right now, we only have this main camera. And if you've played games that were a first-person game or a third-person game or a top-down game, those games are described by what their camera is like. So a first-person game has a camera in the front. A top-down game has a camera looking down. So here is our main camera. And if you click on it, it will tell you some information about it, such as its position, its rotation, and its scale. So, and you'll notice there is a camera component attached to it. So what we'll be doing is we're going to bring in some sprites and put them into our scene, and then we will move our player around, and that camera will sort of follow the player and stuff like that. So
we do have
what I would like to do is have you download all of the sprites that we're going to be using and assets for this game. So again, if you go to, there is a GitHub repository, and I believe this is the link here. If you go to this GitHub repository, there is a button here that says clone or download. And then what you can do is you can just download a zip file. So you don't need any special tools or software to download everything. So if you download this zip file, and then open that zip file, you'll notice that inside of it, there is a folder called Unity, and then a folder called Platformer, and then there's two folders here called Audio and Sprites. Before I continue, I just want to make sure, is anyone not here right now? Is everyone able to get to this GitHub repository?
Carmine, we have a question about somebody trying to get in with a license that says it's invalid to create the 2D project.
Really? They might just need to verify their email address for their account, or just try logging in for it. Okay. Some of you, if you've never opened Unity before, when you open it for the first time, it can kind of really just junk for a second. So let me, I'll pause this for a second, and then I can help some people just get to where we are right now. Okay. Zachary, are you good now? We're waiting on you, Zach. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for that to open for the first time, be sure to go to this GitHub repository, download that zip file, and make sure you've actually unzipped it. If you just click on the zip and try dragging the files, that might not work. If you're on Windows, make sure you actually, on Windows, right-click on the zip file and go to extract files so that you actually take the files out of the zip. Is anyone not ready? I'll just enjoy my tea for a moment. Well, okay. So what we want to do is we want to drag these folders into our Unity project. So if you'll notice down here in Unity, there is a folder that says assets, and assets are your images, your music, your sound effects, your scripts, your materials, some of your physics components and things. So your assets are all of the things that make up your game. So what we're going to do is we can take this sprites and this audio folder, and we can just drag them right into Unity. And then Unity will process these for a little bit, and then they'll be ready to use. While I know it's going to take a different amount of time on different computers, depending on how fast they are, but I'll kind of just show you what's inside of here while some of you are catching up. Inside of audio, we have some music files. Inside of sound effects, we have some sound effects we might use for jumping or collecting a coin or something like that, or reaching the end of a level. Inside of sprites, these sprites are from this person named Kenny. He has tons of free assets available. His website is something like kenny.nl, but tons of free assets you can use. It's great stuff. So we have a little character in here that we're going to be using for our game. And there are some items in here, like a key and a heart and a diamond. And inside of tiles, these are what is going to make up our game. So the first thing, we need to do something with these images first before we can use them. So if you go to characters and then select all of these, you can just hit Command A or Control A. I want to select all of these. Once I select all of these, there is a setting on the right here that says pixels per unit. I want to make this 64. So basically all of our tiles and images are all 64 by 64 pixels. And we want this to be sort of pixel perfect. So you need to select all of these and set this to 64. And then where it says filter mode, put this to no filter. And where it says compression, put that on none. So again, I selected all of these characters. I set this to 64. I set this to no filter. And I set compression to none, and I'm going to hit apply. If you had regular images, all of that settings stops it from looking pixely. But we want to turn those things off because we want our artwork to look pixely for this game. Let's go to our items and do the same thing. I'm going to select all of these. And then once we do this, we're kind of set up and ready to start making stuff. So I'm going to select all of these, set this to 64, set this to no filter, and then I'm going to set this to none and hit apply. So again, I selected everything. I set this to 64 and no filter here, and then none. And we have one more folder to do, and then we'll start making games. I'm going to go to tiles. I'm going to select all, go to 64, no filter, and then no compression, and hit apply. I'll give you guys a chance to catch up.
how would you know to set the pixels per unit to 64 versus like some other number?
Sure. So the person who made this artwork,
Mhm.
when they made this tile, this is a 64 by 64 pixel tile.
Okay.
And usually when, if you looked at those games, like if you look at Super Mario and some of those older games, everything is basically based on that. Like they picked a size for those tiles. When Mario becomes big, he's really like 2 tiles, you know? So there's like 2 pieces that are put together in order to make him. So when whoever designed this artwork, they kind of picked like a baseline,
Okay.
you know, for that. If we were making and that's 64 pixels per unit. So in Unity, for instance, see how this position says 0, 0, then like -10? So the camera is like 10 units back, right? If we were making a 3D game, a unit would be a meter, right? So a character would be like 2 meters, like 2 units tall. But since we're making a pixel game, like you don't really have meters and feet and things, you know?
Yeah.
So we're kind of saying 64 pixels makes up what a unit is, you know?
Okay.
For our game, you know, and another game could be 256, or usually it's multiples of 16, 64, 128. Or if you remember you're counting in binary, usually it's one of those kind of things. 96 by 96 is popular also.
All right.
What did the compression and the no filter do?
So if you have a filter on like bilinear and stuff, what that does is it anti-aliases things, right? So if I had a picture of someone's face, you would want it to anti-alias if you made it big, right? But with the pixel art, we don't want it to do that. We want it to look pixely. So a filter makes things not pixely. So if you're working with pixel art, like if you're making a platformer that is based on pixel art, you want to turn off any kind of like anti-aliasing, which sounds funny. If you were doing something with stuff that's more photorealistic, you would want anti-aliasing. Usually in a 3D game also, you can turn on anti-aliasing and turn it off and that kind of a thing. In pixel games, you don't use anti-aliasing because that blurs edges, right?
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. You guys ask some tough questions right away. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start you know, using these tiles and building out our level. So let me just move this over. So what I'm going to do is if I go to hierarchy, I can hit the plus sign. You can also right click. I'm going to go to 2D object, and then you should see tile map. And then you'll see that this grid has been added. That there's a tile map here. Does everyone have that so far? Now, if I go to Window, and then 2D, I should have Tile Palette here. If you don't, and by the way, you can dock this down here. If you don't have this tile palette available to you in the menu, if you don't have it in the menu, you can go to Window, and then Package Manager. And then if you click 2D Tile Map Editor, there is, my button says remove, but yours would say install. So if when you installed all this, you missed a checkbox somewhere or something, you can install this after. So again, if you don't have this tile palette available to you, you should go to Window and then Package Manager, look for 2D Tile Map Editor, and then your button should say install instead of remove. You should be able to hit install, and it should take like a minute. It's a very small component. Everyone happy?
Sorry, can you do the steps again? How you would install that?
I'm sorry?
Could you do again? Like, can you show how you would install it again?
Okay. So if for instance, if you go to window, window and you don't have tile palette here, you should go to window, then package manager. And then there should be something that says 2D tile map editor. You should be able to click on that and then click install. My button says remove right now, but yours should say install. It's possible if you're using an older version of Unity or a Windows version that instead of being under window, it's maybe under file or edit or preference. You might need to hunt for it or something, but it's usually under window. Is that
All right, thank you.
Did it work out for you?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so a tile palette is like if you were a painter and you had a palette, you would have a bunch of colors on it. Our tile palette is like the tiles that we're going to use to paint our map, our level of our game. So we're going to hit create new palette. And you see, if you look in this tile palette, you can, again, everything, you can kind of dock it at the bottom. There's a little button here, it says create new palette. And then down here, you can just call it palette if you want and hit create. It'll ask you where you want to save it. You might want to save this to your assets folder, for instance. So I'm going to click here on assets and hit choose. And right now, what you should see here is it says drag tile, sprite, or sprite texture assets here. So what we can do now is I can take, for instance, this, I want to take this, if I go to assets, sprites, Kenny, tiles, I can click on this sort of dirt with grass tile, and I can drag it down here. And if I hit save, now I could start using, if I click on this, I can start using this to draw out some kind of level. If we want to add in another tile, maybe we want to grab this kind of dirt tile here. We can just click on this and drag it in here, hit save, and then I could, whoops, click on this one. I can click here. Maybe I want to make some kind of, there's like an eraser if you need to erase, there's like a fill. There's a bunch of, so if you need to make a bunch of these tiles all at once, let me show you. So for instance, I'm gonna grab this sort of rock here, it's number 16, into here and hit save. So if I select this, I can click on this rectangle tool in the middle. And what's great is I could do something like this where I just kind of drag, and this is sort of letting me just draw like a lot of them at one time. If you want to see what your game is starting to look like, if you click on this game tab, you can see what our game looks like right now. So this, again, this scene tab here is for sort of drawing your scene and putting things into the scene. And if we click on game, this is what our game looks like right now. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a wall back here. I believe you can hold, yeah, there's an eraser. So I'll give you a minute to, I think this is kind of the fun part, is the level design. So, so when you're in the scene view, by the way, you can use your scroll wheel. So if you have a mouse, I have a trackpad. You can use the 2-finger scroll, and you can sort of zoom out. And there is a hand tool in the top left. You can sort of move around. So this way, I can sort of I can keep drawing my level. So basically what's happening is that white box is what the camera can see right now. If I click on game, the camera can only see what's in that white box so far, but your level kind of extends a bit to the right here. So I'm going to give you a minute to sort of enjoy this part.
How do I bring out the tile palette again?
If you go to Window, 2D Tile Palette,
Oh, okay.
and then you can dock it. So what's really, you see how each one of these things has like a tab on it? Like you could dock this tile palette at the top. You could dock it at the bottom. There's all types of different ways you can, you can make it float or something like that. So there's all different ways you can sort of do that. And again, if something gets really messed up, if you lose all your windows, you can just reset your layout, and that will sort of bring all of your windows back to where they were. Okay, so again, when you're looking at your scene, you can use your scroll wheel or your 2-finger scroll to sort of zoom in and out of your scene. And you can, click on these tiles and, draw what's going on here. Maybe at the very end, we're going to put some sort of ending. So I'll put another wall, here of some kind. Anyone have any questions? Hit save. Go to File and then hit save. This way, in case your computer crashes or mine does, you don't lose all this stuff you're working on. So definitely go to File and then save. Something else you can do while you're doing this is, if you click on the Game tab and see what your game looks like, if you go to your hierarchy and click on your camera, you'll notice that it says background, and that is this dark blue color. So you could, for instance, click on that color bar and choose some other background. So for instance, a lot of the Super Mario games have this kind of blue sky background. You could choose, my demo had like a gray background. Maybe you want to use black or something. So you can sort of, sometimes these games have like a desert level and it's got sort of a, some other kind of color. So you can choose a different background color. I think I'll just use some dark gray color. So again, if you go to your hierarchy, this is the things that are in your scene. You can click on camera and you'll see where it says background. You can click on this color and you can pick a color. If you're good with your hex codes, you can pick a color there. And just make sure you're hitting save every once in a while. This way you're not sad or something.
How did you get the background color again?
If you go to hierarchy, click on camera. When you click on the camera, this inspector opens up. This is all of the attributes of the camera and the components that it has. And you'll notice that it says background here. And if I click on this or double click on this, it'll pop up this color picker. And then from there, you can pick a color for your background. So for instance, this game might have a solid color background. Other games might have, you can layer in backgrounds. You can just put in images. 3D games have something known as a skybox for a background. So yeah, the background is underneath the camera settings here. And make sure you just hit save once in a while, or hit Command S or Control S or whatever it is for your system.
How did you get the, I know how to change it and all that. I saw that. Just how did you get the color into the background itself? Because I still have like the grids and stuff.
Click on game, the game tab.
Okay.
Yeah, the game tab is your like preview of what the
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. So the game tab is sort of like a preview of what the game. Can I hide this at the top? there we go. Yeah, so right now, for instance, if you were to hit play, this is what the game looks like right now. So we haven't done any programming yet. We haven't done anything. We just sort of built a very basic level. But we're gonna start doing some putting in our character and doing a little bit of coding.
Wait, how did you get the tiles in?
So
I had the tile palette available. I
Yeah.
don't have the palette.
so there should be a button like here. It should say
Mhm.
create new palette.
Okay.
So when you click that, it creates like a palette. So, and then from there, you can drag your tiles onto your palette. Maybe when you're creating a game, you have like a snow level or like if you ever play Mega Man, there's like all these different levels, you know, each of those levels has like a palette of tiles that it's using, you know, for those levels. You know, there's like a machine level and an ice level and a fire level, you know. So for this level, this is our palette of tiles we're using. If we had a different level with different, we can lay out different tiles and use those, you know. Or we could use the same palette from a different level and stuff like that. So that's what this is for. All right, is everyone ready? I want to bring in our character. Yes. So if we go to characters, there's a bunch of different frames of this character doing various things like jumping and climbing, but I believe the middle one here is just this character being idle. So what I want to do is take this character and I want to drag the character into the hierarchy. So I just dragged it from here. So now I'm sort of putting it into my scene. And you'll notice that it says it's named platform char idle. I just want to click on it. If you sort of click and move your mouse, let's just name this player and hit save. So I dragged this character from here to here and I clicked on it and I just renamed. You can probably right click and hit rename. I just named it player. And you'll notice it's sort of floating here. And what I want to do is I want to click on player and there's a tool. If I go to scene view here, if I'm on the scene tab, I want to click on scene and you see that it says move tool. And if I click on move tool, I can then sort of move my character. You can zoom in with your mouse again if you need to. So with this hand, I can sort of move around my scene. And with this move tool, I can sort of place my character somewhere. I'm going to sort of purposefully place them a little bit in the air. So this is what I have right now. I'm going to hit save. And if I hit play, you'll see that our character is just sort of suspended there. And we're going to fix that in a second. Is everyone so far able to get a player there? Is everyone not? Everyone's cool so far?
How did you enter the player in the hierarchy?
I just clicked on this character here. The one that, he's called idle, character
Oh,
idle.
okay.
I just dragged it from here to here. Yeah, so this, where it says project at the bottom here, this project, these are all of like the hard files, like the files on your hard drive, you know? The hierarchy is the files that are currently in the scene right now. So on your main menu, you might have some text and some other stuff going on, and on the level, you have enemies and UI. So the hierarchy is the currently living and breathing things in your scene. The project is sort of like all of your files that you can use to build stuff with. So you'll notice our sprite is just sitting there. If we hit play, that it doesn't do anything. So make sure you hit save. What we're gonna do is we're gonna click on player, and you'll notice on the right, there is something that says add component. So we're gonna click add component, and there is something, if you start typing RIGI, there's something known as rigid body 2D. So what this component does is it adds physics to this sprite. So if I click on, I want to add component, I started spelling rigid body. You want the 2D version. And basically, you'll see there's a bunch of stuff here like mass and drag and gravity and stuff like that. So what this is doing is when we hit play, you'll notice that our character starts falling, and it starts falling because it now has gravity. If I change this gravity to a 0 and hit play, then my character won't have gravity, it'll just stay there. But if I put this at 1, this gives my player gravity. And make sure you hit save once in a while. So you might notice that our character is falling through the floor. So what we need something known as a collider on our character, and we're also going to put one on those tiles. So when you're playing games, you might have heard of something called a hitbox. So a hitbox is another word for collider. It's something that detects when something has collided with something else. So if we click on our player, and let's go to the scene view, make sure you're in the scene view this time. If you hit add component, there is something called a capsule collider 2D. And a capsule collider is sort of shaped like a capsule or like a pill or something. This is a typical collider that's used with a lot of characters in games. So I'm going to choose a capsule collider 2D. And then, you notice the way Unity works, this is, we build things from components. This is different than if you know about object-oriented programming or something else where you inherit things from other things. Here you kind of have something and you just keep putting components on it. So we have this sprite and we added the rigid body to give it physics. Now we're adding this collider component so that it can collide with things. So if we click on this capsule collider and there's a little thing here that says edit. If we click on this, if we look at our character, you'll notice that there are these little handles here, and we can sort of shape this to what our character is shaped like. And it's okay if it's a little off. It doesn't need to be exactly perfect. But it's actually kind of nice if it goes in a pixel or so. So I added this capsule collider 2D component, and then there's a little thing here that says edit collider. And then if you're in the scene view, you should see these little handles, and you can sort of shape this capsule shape to fit our character. If our character was a ball, we could use, there's a circle collider, there's a box collider for things that are box shaped. And there's other different shaped colliders that you can use for things. Make sure you hit save if you haven't in a while. Does anyone have any questions? So if I hit play, our player is still falling through the tiles, and that's because our tiles need a collider on them. So for something to collide with another thing, so if I click on my tile map, so if I go to if I go to the hierarchy and expand this and click on tile map and hit add component, there is a tile map collider 2D. And when you do this, you'll see all these little green boxes sort of light up around all of our tiles. So adding this component to our tile map sort of does all this work for us of you know, making it so we'll collide with these tiles. So I'm gonna hit save, and then now if I hit play, my character should just fall there and stay. If they're not falling far enough, you can go back to your player and edit their collider and maybe just scrunch it down a little bit here and hit play again. And then there you go. Maybe that looks a little better. I'm gonna hit save, and then I'm gonna see if you have questions or have gotten this far. Once you're this far, we can start doing coding. We're gonna add a script to our character so they can move and jump. So we're gonna get into programming next. So I just wanna make sure everyone is at the point where they hit this button and their character stops when they hit the tiles. Is anyone not at this point? Their computer's running slow or something is happening or not happening? Everybody's happy. I'm way behind. Do you have, you know what, let me wait for a minute or two. Does anybody want me to show something they missed? I'm happy to go back and show something that they missed. If you're at this point, if you're already at this point and if you're caught up, feel free to go to your tile map and build out your level. You can zoom out, you can move around. You're welcome to add some more tiles and make your level a little more interesting looking. So if you are caught up, feel free to work on this level. Make sure you hit save. If you're not caught up, I'm happy to show you something again. And again, I believe the recording will be available. Yeah, I think it would take me a bit to go from the very beginning, but what I want to, just so you can catch up, it's really important that you download the, if you missed downloading the assets, it's important that you grab these from the GitHub. So here is the link again. If you missed getting the assets, you can download, you can click to download these assets, the zip file here. After we downloaded that zip file, we dragged in everything into, we dragged in the folders into our project here. After we got all the files in, the next thing that we did was we went to here, the hierarchy, and we added a 2D object known as a tile map. After we added the tile map, we went to window and then 2D and then tile palette, and we created a new tile palette and then we dragged some of those tiles on there. And the last thing, the most recent thing we did is we brought our player in, we added this rigid body component and we added this capsule collider component. So that's kind of where we are right now. So before we start coding, just to let you guys know, we are going to be offering a class during the summer, which is a 2-week long class, which is for you. It's for some of the high school students who have been accepted, and high school students who haven't applied yet. So if you are liking what's going on, or if you don't like what's going on, we're offering a 2-week intensive on game development. So it will be we'll be making a game like this. We're making another game. You'll be learning more about programming and more about game development and using Unity in general. Dr. Hill, did I miss anything there? I guess I'm fine. So if you look in your email, we'll be, like I said, we'll be offering a program. You know, if you're accepted, I believe you can get credits, elective credits for that. So if you are coming into PACE from high school and you like what we're doing today, there'll be like I said, a 2-week long intensive. You can get college credit at PACE. So we'll email about that if you're interested in that kind of a thing. Okay, so let's do some coding. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to go to my assets folder inside of project, and I am going to, you can go to the plus sign, or you can right click if you want to. I want to go to create. So basically we're going to create a file in our project. I want to go to create, C# script, and I'm going to name it player controller. Don't have any spaces in the name. Just write player controller. And the style with C# and with this language is to, you know, kind of use capital letters every thing here. So I'm naming this script file player controller. Once I create this file, it will take a moment. I am going to drag this player controller onto my player. So basically what this is doing is, this is an empty coding file, but we're going to add to it. But you're going to drag this onto your player, and what you'll see if you click on your player, what you should see is that the player has this sprite renderer, it has this rigid body on it, it has a capsule collider on it, and it also has this player controller, which is this script file that we're going to start writing. So once you have dragged that on here, you can see that that's there. Let's double click on player controller. And when you double click on this, it will open up Visual Studio, or it might open some other thing. Let's see, what's going on here, preferences. Visual Studio, okay. So if it asks you to update or anything, please say no. It will start a whole thing with updating, and you don't want to do that right now. So I will increase this font size. Is that good? Is that font size okay? Good. Okay. So this is what our script file looks like. This language is C#, this programming language. And basically there is a function here that says void start. And but the code that we put inside of here will happen one time. So when this level starts in our game, it will run this code that's inside of start. The stuff that we put inside of update will happen every frame. So if on my computer, the game is running at 60 frames a second, and on your computer, it's running at 90 frames a second, this part that says update will get called 60 times a second or 100 times a second. So basically what we're going to do is we want to see if someone is hitting a key or doing something like that. So what we're going to do first is at the top of our file here, we're going to say rigid body 2D RB. So basically our player has that rigid body attached to it. We need to find that rigid body and then tell it to add force, and we want it to jump. We want it to move. We want to, push the player forward or move them backwards or do something. So the first thing we're doing is finding that rigid body component that's attached to our player. So I'm typing rigid body 2D RB here, and then inside of start, I'm going to write RB equals get component rigid body 2D. So again, this is basically when our level starts, the script on our player will run, and it's going to find the rigid body that's attached to it. And once we find that component that's attached to it, we can talk to it. We can say jump, add force, and do other things. If you've never coded before, this is going to look really bizarre.
You said if I double click on the script, it opens up Visual Studio, right?
Yeah.
I'm not having it happen.
If it doesn't do that, you might need to go to Unity, then Preferences. I actually had to do it on mine because I have a different. See here, it's if you go to External Tools, it says External Script Editor. If it says right now, open by file extension, you should put it to Visual Studio.
Okay.
If it already says Visual Studio and it's still not doing it, put it to open by file extension and then put it back again, and that might kick it in,
Where do I go to Preferences?
Yeah, so on the Mac, I would go to Unity and then Preferences.
Oh, okay.
And then it says External Tools. And then it says External Script Editor, Visual Studio. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here for doing iOS stuff and other things. There's interesting things here. But yeah, our script files, by the way, are going to be so small that you don't really need all of the power of Visual Studio for what we're going to do today. So you might be able to get by with just a regular text editor. You might, what's nice is if it opens Visual Studio, the autocomplete should work,
I still don't have Visual Studio as an option. I have Browse and Open File extension.
When you installed Unity, it's possible you didn't check the box to install Visual Studio, maybe?
Oh, okay.
You can use whatever text editor. You're just not going to get the autocomplete. You just got to be really careful about the uppercase and lowercase here.
Oh, okay.
Which you're probably used to from other things you've done. Okay. So inside of this code here, we're going to add another variable here. We're going to say bool jump equals false. So what we're going to do is when someone hits a key, we're going to kind of say that we have a jump that needs to happen, and then we're going to take care of the jump that's waiting to happen. It's kind of a funny way of doing it, but maybe it makes sense in a little bit. So I'm making something, this is called a Boolean in other languages. So I have bool jump equals false. And then inside of update, I want to write if input dot get key down. Let's do key code dot, maybe the space bar is jump for our game. I want to say jump equals true. So basically, if somebody hits space, then we have a jump that needs to happen. And we'll put this together in a second here. If you've never coded before, you have to be really careful about your kind of squiggly brackets and where they line up, so and stuff like that. I'm going to continue. So we're going to add something down here. I'm going to write void fixed update. So fixed update happens whenever physics happens. So if your computer is running 90 frames a second or 80 frames or whatever it is, the physics isn't happening 90 times a second. It's only happening about 10 times a second, which is a fact that's not super important right now. But basically, whenever we add force to something, we want something to move or jump or do something, we do that inside of fixed update. So I have here private void fixed update. You actually don't need the word private there. I'm going to write if jump. That means if they hit jump, RB, so this is that rigid body that we found earlier, add force, transform dot up. So this is what up means to me. So right now, if I'm standing, up means like up. But if I was laying down, up would mean like to the left or something. So transform.up is like, what is up relative to me right now? And I think 6 is a good, we'll check that. And we need a little parameter here, force mode 2D impulse. So this is all of our code to jump right now. I can maybe get the whole thing on the screen. Maybe I'll kind of clean this up a little bit so that it's a little easier to see all at once. So basically what we're doing is inside of start, we're saying, let's find that component that's attached to us. Then every frame, we're looking to see if someone hit the space bar. If they did, then there's like a jump waiting to happen. Inside of fixed update, ooh, we need to do this, sorry. Jump equals false. Inside of fixed update, this is like when Unity goes to run physics. We're saying, hey, is there a jump waiting to happen? If there is, set it to false so we don't continuously jump. We're basically saying we took care of this jump. And then we're saying add force, what up means to me, times 6, this is like how high we can jump or how much force we're doing. Impulse is instantaneous force, like an explosive force. So there's different kinds of force you can apply over time or instantly. So we're basically saying add this much force instantly, like an explosion happened in some way. If you hit save for this file, you can hit Command S or something. If you go to our game, if you hit play, what should happen is when I hit space, you should see your character jump. If you are not seeing that, it's possible if you look in the lower corner of Unity, you might see something in red there, like there's an error. You can also, if you go to Window, then General, then Console, the console window shows you if you have any errors. So I'm going to dock this down here. So I went to Window, then General, and then Console. Now, I'm going to purposefully put an error in my code if I can. So let's say I had an error in my code. I forgot, I just spelled something wrong. So I purposely have an error, okay? If I go to Unity, inside of this console, where is it? Oh, maybe I didn't hit save or something. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so here you'll see it says that I have an error here. So I purposely put an error in my code. So inside of this console, it has this thing here. It says, hey, there's an error. If I click on this error, it actually jumps me right to the line where the error is. So I'm going to fix this and hit save. And you'll notice that inside of Visual Studio, if I have an error, it starts showing like a squiggly line. It'll start complaining about stuff. So Yeah, so this is the code. Again, hit save on the code, hit save here, and then if you hit play, we should have a character that can jump. I'm going to put the code up again because I think if you have any problems right now, it's probably with the code part. Does anyone have any questions?
I just realized that I already had Visual Studio on here,
Yeah.
and I didn't end up downloading it when I downloaded Unity. Do you know what the exact extension I need for this?
Oh, you mean, can it find your existing Visual Studio on there?
Yeah, like I'm in Visual Studio Code right now, but when I try to run it, I get a bunch of errors.
You can't run it from Visual Studio Code. You have to run it from inside Unity.
Okay.
Yeah, like if you're in Visual Studio, like if I go to Visual Studio right now and I hit Visual Studio's build button, it's going to be like, what? You know, you need to sort of run things from Unity, and
Yeah, what
you're basically using it as a code editor, you know.
Mm-hmm. I clicked on the when I clicked on player controller, the file, it opened up this. It opened up the Visual Studio Code.
Oh, Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to still type the file as a text editor. Like for today, you should be able to still type this stuff. You know what I mean?
I can.
Yeah. Yeah, what might be happening is it might not autocomplete. Like if I start typing something, it gives me all this stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Visual Studio Code is going to do that.
Oh, never mind. I downloaded like a bunch of extensions for Unity, so I think it finally started working.
Okay. Yeah, it also might take a second to kick in for the first time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know if I did anything, but sure. Feel free to tell people I was very helpful.
Okay.
The first time you run a lot of this stuff, it just takes a second to kind of like connect everything. I think like if you guys try this again next week or something, if you watch the video or just run through it again, everything will probably just go so much smoother, and you'll probably be skipping through the video because everything will just work, you know. But the first time is a lot of hiccups, I think, you know. So make sure you've saved everything. Everything is happy. So I want to do something to move our player around. So what we can do is we are going to, there's a couple ways we can do this. Let's do it here. Inside of our code, we're going to add something called, one second, sorry, vector3 move. And basically, we're going to hit the left and right keys, and that's going to make us move around. I know everyone hates this part of, you know, when you were learning about vectors in math and stuff, a vector 3 here has 3 coordinates, x, y, and z. For 2D, we just ignore z. But if you're wondering why that says vector 3, it has 3 coordinates in it, x, y, and z, and it's a vector technically. It has a direction and a magnitude. So what we're going to do here is we have vector3 move. Inside of update, we're going to write move equals vector3.0. So this sort of just resets it to 0 so that we won't move or do anything. And then what we're going to do here is say if input dot get key, and you'll notice that we wrote get key down for space, but to move left and right, we want to hold down the key. So get key is the key held down? Get key down is, was the key pressed, when the key is initially pressed. So we want to be able to hold down the keys to move left and right. So if input.get key code dot D, we're going to say move equals move plus transform dot right. So basically, if someone hits the key, so transform dot right is what does right mean to me right now. So we're going to take move and just add right to it. We're going to basically say go to the right. And then its sort of complement is to say if input dot get key code dot A, and this is going to look kind of funny, move equals move, whoops, minus transform dot right. Now, there is no transform dot left. I don't know why, but we're basically saying if someone hits the A key, move to the left, and if someone hits the D key, move to the right. So you can see we're kind of creating our input stuff here. We have D to move to the right, A moves to the left, and then we have space, which kind of triggers a jump. So inside of update, we're sort of looking for keys that people are pressing. And then inside of fixed update, we're going to actually be doing applying the force to move this object around. So inside of this fixed update, I'm going to say if move, and this is does not equal vector 3.0. So basically, if there is some kind of movement waiting to happen, this means does not equal. We're going to say RB dot add force, and let's do move. This is like what direction we want to move in, times, let's try 8. So we're saying if there is some movement that's supposed to happen, let's add force. We're basically pushing something to whatever force was. It's either to the right or negative to the right, which is to the left. Then we're saying, hey, if there's a jump pending, let's handle that. So here we're sort of getting everything we're supposed to do. And then here we are applying it to the character. And if you hit save here, and then go to Unity, if you hit play, you should be able to hit, there's something funny sort of happening here, which we're going to fix in a second. So we're going to fix that in a second. Some funny things happening. Poor player. Just taking a nap. So what we need to do is, so what's happening is when we are moving to the right and to the left, there's actually some friction between the floor and our character. You could, for instance, make a bunch of ice and then make the player would slide across that. But there's actually a little bit of friction here, which is why these funny things are happening. So we can actually stop our player from tumbling. So the way we do that is make sure you're not in play mode right now. Make sure you're stopped. If you click on the player in the hierarchy and then go to their rigid body, 2D here, this is on the player, you'll see it says constraints. If I click on this constraints, you can click freeze rotation Z. So X is to left and right, Y is up and down, and Z is sort of into the screen. So if you look at my camera, Z is sort of into the screen. So if you turn that off, then the player can't rotate, won't rotate like that. So I'm gonna hit save, and then what you should see is our player should be able to move left and move right. You should be able to, jump over any of these obstacles you have and stuff like that. It should be behaving like how you think it would behave. Let me put the code back up, and then I want to make sure everyone is caught up to this point. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So make sure you hit save on everything. And again, if you hit play, you should be able to move and jump around here. Now, one thing you're noticing is probably that our player, that our camera isn't following our player. So if our player goes off the screen, you can actually go to your scene view. You can see that if I click on scene right now, that my player has gone off out of the view of the camera. So what we want to do is we want our camera to follow the player around. So let's get out of play mode. What we're going to do is we're going to write a script that we put on the camera that makes the camera follow the player. So in my project, in my assets folder, you can hit plus, or you can right click and go to create C# script, and let's call this camera controller. So I am creating another script now. So you see, Unity does a lot of this stuff for you with the collisions and the physics, but in order to make something a game, we need to do some actual programming to kind of glue everything together. So I'm going to take this camera controller script and drag it onto my camera here and hit save. And then if I double click on camera controller, we can write something, we can write the script for our camera. So inside of this camera controller script, I am going to write game object player. So everything in Unity is a game. Our player is a game object. The tile map's a game object. The camera is a game object of some kind. So here I'm typing game object and player. And basically what we want to do is find the player and sort of attach ourselves to that player. So here inside of start, I'm going to write player equals game object dot find game object with tag player. So basically we can tag our player with the word player, and we can find our player by the word player. If we had enemies and spawn points and all these kind of things, we could find things that are tagged as a spawn point or tagged as a power up or tagged as an AI and stuff like that. And we'll set this tag in a moment. So here I'm basically saying when this camera starts up, it's going to look for the player, and now it has a reference to the player that's in the scene somewhere. Inside of update, I'm going to write var passes like position equals player. I'm sorry. Not doing that. I'm doing position equals transform dot position. This is the camera's position. So I'm getting the camera's position. I'm saying the camera's position dot x, you notice it has x, y, and z. Position dot x equals player dot transform dot position dot x. So basically I'm getting the camera's position, and I'm storing that, and I'm saying the X of the camera is equal to the player's position's X coordinate. And then I'm going to say transform that position. This is like my position equals position. So this is kind of basically I'm getting the camera's current position. I'm setting the X of it to the player's X. And then I'm basically taking the result of that and I'm putting that back into the camera. I'm going to hit save here, and then we need to do one more thing, and then our camera will follow our player around. So if we click on our player, you'll see that it has something here that says tag. So if I'm in the scene view, if I click on player and then click tag, I can change this to, you'll see there's a bunch of tags here like respawn, finish, main camera. If I change this to player and hit save, we're tagging our player with the tag player. And now if I hit play, what should happen is our camera, if you look, as our player moves, the camera is following the player as I move across my level. I think I'm going to make this make this a bigger pit here. Okay, so does anyone not have a camera following the player? Make sure that you made that camera controller script that if you look at your camera, if you click on camera, you should see it has a camera component, it has this audio listener thing, but you'll see camera controller script is attached to my camera. Just like on my player had player controller script attached to the player. So again, if I hit play, I should be able to move left and right. I should be able to jump. The camera's following me. It's starting to look like an actual game now, which is really cool. Does anyone have any questions? Or let me put the script back up. Does anyone have any questions? I'm looking at the chat in case you need to write something in the chat. There's two Carmines, one for the video, one for the like a monitor chat window. What I would like to add next, so we have about 30 minutes left. What I would like to add next is I want to make it so that if we fall in a pit, that right now, if I just fall through this pit here, we just sort of go away. I want to make it so that it resets us to the beginning. Maybe we can add in some audio, maybe some kind of sound effect or something like that. Or maybe even music. And if we have some time, we'll add, we can add another level or something like that. I can take requests too. So what we're going to do next is if you click on player, if you hit play, you'll notice that you keep seeing the word transform. And if you look here where it says transform, it has the position. The X is -5, the Y is -2. And if you watch that, as I move my player, you'll notice that, you know, his X position is changing, right? And then if I fall down this pit, you'll notice that my player is, the Y just keeps changing. So what we can do is we can look for this Y changing, and we can reset where our player is. So basically, if our Y is too low, we can reset our position of our player, right? So again, if you look here, if I fall in this pit, you'll notice maybe when we get to minus 10 or 20, we should reset the player. So what we're going to do is go back to am I missing anything? Okay. If you go back to our player controller script, hold on for 1 second. Okay, so if we go to our player controller, what we can do here is we can save where our player started, and then if they go down too low, we can reset the player to where they were. So let's go to our player controller script. And inside of player controller, let's add something here that is vector 3 start pos for start position. So I have this variable vector 3 start position, and basically what I can do is say inside of start, I can say start position equals transform.position. So what I'm doing is I am getting where the player started and I'm putting it inside of a variable. So I'm sort of saving where the player started. Then inside of update, what I can do inside of update here is I could say if transform.position.y is less than -20, transform.position equals start position. So basically, oops, I have a variable called start pos for start position. Inside of start, I'm sort of saving where the player started. And then inside of update, I'm saying if that position, if the player right now, if their Y is less than -20, like they've fallen really far, just put them back to where they started again. Kind of like a checkpoint or something. I mean, you could add a checkpoint and use that as the position that the player goes back to. So let's hit save here. And if I go back to here and hit play, I can just move. And then again, if I fall here, you'll see that my player just sort of went back to the start. Let me go further along. If I fall in this pit, you'll see that my player sort of comes, maybe -20 isn't enough. Maybe I need to do -10. So I'm gonna hit play here. And then as my player moves, I'm gonna fall down. And you'll see that I just kind of magically appear where I started again. So this is kind of an, you'll see that it's actually really handy. In code, we can actually just look at the player's position and move them around and do some other stuff. Anyone have any questions? I think we're going to add a sound effect next. Okay, if you click on player, so now we're going to add a sound effect whenever they hit jump. If you click on player, you can hit add component, and we're going to add an audio source. So basically, an audio source, sound can come out of our player. If you are making a game that's a 3D game, maybe something in the distance has sound coming out of it. If you want to have looping music, you could create an object and have music coming out of it. So basically, I went to player and then went to add component, and then I chose audio source, and I'm going to hit save. I'm going to click on our player controller. And inside of our code for player controller, I am going to add at the top audio source, and maybe we'll call this audio SRC. I believe the word audio is used already for something else. So I have audio source, audio SRC here. So basically this is a component that's attached to us. I want to, inside of start, I want to take audio source and I want to find that audio source that's attached to us. So this is basically the component that produces sound. Audio source equals get. Notice it's just like here we need to define that rigid body component so we can tell it to add force. Here we're finding the audio source component so that we can tell it to play a sound effect. At the top, we're going to add audio clip, and let's call this jump sound, jump SND. So an audio clip is the actual sound effect that you play out of the audio source. So maybe if this player jumps, it plays one sound. If they shoot, it plays another sound. If they die or fall in a pit, maybe it plays some other sound. So basically, the clip is the wave or MP3 file that you're playing. That's the effect that you're playing. So all we need to do here, once we have these two things here, audio source here, inside of our jump, we're going to write audio. So this is if someone hits jump, audio source dot play one shot jump sound. It kind of means play something one time. If we wanted to do looping music and other stuff, we would use some other commands. So basically, we have our audio source and the sound effect. We're getting the audio source component here. Then we're saying, hey, if someone hits jump, audio source play one shot jump sound. If the player was shooting, we could say audio source dot play one shot shoot sound. If they fall in a pit, we can even add in here when they fall, we could add in a sound effect for them falling, So let's hit save. Oh, I forgot something. You need to write public here. Sorry. So at the top of player controller, next to jump sound, you need to write public, and we'll see what that means in a second. So here we have public audio clip jump sound. Now we need to find an audio clip. So I'm going to go to the sound effects folder. And so what you can do is if you look here, there's this sort of bar. If you look here, this sort of double thick bar. If you click on this and move it up, you have to kind of click and drag it. There is a little waveform here. And you can sort of find, maybe there is some not crazy jump sound or something like that. Let's look for falling, hit, drop, walk. Jump in here somewhere. Let's find something simple. That might work. Oh, that sounds good. Maybe that's our jump sound, or I kind of like this one a little better. This is 06 cursor 2. So what you can do here is if I go to player, you notice on player, it says jump sound here. It says jump sound. So when we were inside of our code and we told this to be public, what that did is it made it show up here. So you notice it says audio clip. It's expecting an audio clip. So what you can do is you can click and drag this onto here. If that doesn't work, you can click this little circle button with the dot next to it, and you can choose one from the list here. So if you can't drag onto there, it's sort of a tricky maneuver the first time. You can just click there and do that. So now if I hit save, make sure you've hit save somewhere along the way here. If I hit save, I should be able to So you should hear that sound effect whenever you jump. I wonder if there is a falling, drop. Respawn. What's that sound like? Maybe what we'll do is let's add another sound effect to our player. So if we go to assets, player controller, we can write inside of our player controller, we can put public audio clip respawn. And then when our player falls too far, we can say audio source stop play one shot respawn. Let's call it respawn sound just to be consistent. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add another sound effect so that when the player falls too far, then we are going to play this respawn sound. So I'm going to hit save here. And then if we click on our player again, we need to find that respawn sound. Or you can use another sound if you want to. So now if I hit save and I hit play, I can hit jump. And then if I fall, it'll play some kind of sound effect. It's actually nice is that little sound effect actually really helps to let the player know something happened. I think when we were falling and just respawning, it was kind of hard to know what's going on. But I think now that there's a sound effect, kind of let you know that something happened, right? It's an extra conveyance that something weird happened maybe. So again, I can kind of walk here and jump. And it kind of respawns me. So let's hit save. And let me make sure we got about 15 minutes left. And I think it might be nice to show, adding another level or something else like that. So anyone have any questions at this point? I wonder if there is a... So what I think we'll do is, let's do this. I think I'll show going to another level so we can kind of have the experience of getting past this level and then going to another one. So what I'd like to do is, let's click on scene. And if you look in these tiles, click on tile map. So go to, in your hierarchy, click on tile map. And what we're going to do is we can add this, if you notice there's like a piece of a door here. So let's click on this door and add it here. Hit save. And then we can click on this other part of the door and hit save. And then we can click on tile map again, and we can add this, click on our door piece and maybe add our oops. We can sort of add in that door there. So what I did is inside of these tiles, I just dragged over this kind of door. And then again, if I run this, you know, if I, you see there's like sort of a door there. And what we want to do is we want to make it so that if we touch this door, we go to another level. So I'm going to hit save. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to do something interesting here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to, inside of our scene in our hierarchy, we're going to add an empty game object. So if I go to create empty, you'll see that there's an empty game object here. And I want you to put this at 0, 0, 0. And basically, we're going to click on this, put it at 0, 0, 0, and then rename this to door. Okay? So I have door here, and it's empty. There's nothing attached to it. There's nothing here. What we're going to do is we're going to add a collider to it, and then when the player touches this collider, it's sort of a, they call it a trigger. It's going to run code that moves to another level. So while we're clicked on door, let's hit add component, and we can add box collider 2D. And if you look in our scene, you'll see our box is over there. I'm going to click on this move, make sure you're in the scene tab. I'm going to click on this move tool, and then I want to move this box sort of where this door is. And then what you can do is you can hit that same, you know how there's like an edit button here? You can click edit, and then you can make this box sort of fit where the door is. So the idea is that when the player collides with this, you can turn it off. When the player collides with this door, then we are going to make them, we're going to load another level. So if I go to assets, we're going to add another script. So I'm going to go to assets and then go to create C# script and call it door controller. And then you can hit that plus sign and go to C# script if you want to. I'm going to drag the door controller over the door. So now the door controller has this collider attached to it and this door controller script attached to it. So make sure you hit save. We're going to click on door controller. And inside of door controller, the idea is that right now we have a scene. We want to load another scene. So inside of door controller, we're going to add at the top here, sort of above where the code starts, using Unity Engine.scene management. And then we can write void, whoops, on collision enter 2D. So collision enter 2D is, on collision enter is when something first collides with us. There's on collision stay, that's when something is still colliding with you. And on collision exit is when someone has stopped colliding with you. So basically the instant someone touches this door, we want to load another scene. So here we can write if collision dot, is it game object? Incoming game object, perfect. Collision.gameObject.tag equals player, right? There's that tag again. So what's nice is we want to see if the player collided with us. If we had enemies or AI walking around, we don't want an AI to walk into this door and then the scene loads. We want to make sure what's walking into us is the player. So if what collided with us as a door is the player, then we want to do scene manager dot load scene, and we can call it level 2. And we'll very quickly sort of whip up a level 2 just so that you can see this happen. I'll leave this code up. Actually, we don't even need any of this code here. We just need that one part. So this is all of the code for our door. Basically saying we have a collider. If what collided with us is the player, then load another scene. We don't want to accidentally have an enemy AI or something trigger loading another scene. And I think if I run this right now, it'll probably give me some kind of error that we don't have a scene 2. Yeah, it's telling me I don't have a scene called level 2 yet. So we're going to make a very quick level 2, and I think we'll kind of have the very basics of how this stuff works. Okay, so make sure you've hit save and your scene is saved. What we're going to do is, it's more light, sorry. We're going to add another scene. So this is one scene. It has a camera, it has a tile map in it, it has our player. So what we're going to do is, before we make the next scene, before we do that, I want you to click on player in your hierarchy and drag the player down to assets. So what this does is, so I took the player from up here, I dragged it into our project, into assets, and hit save. What this does is it creates something known as a prefab. And we can just take this, if you notice for our player, we had to add that rigid body, we had to turn off that Z rotation, we added the capsule collider, we added the player script, we wired up the sounds, we added the audio source. We don't want to do, if our game has 100 levels, we don't want to do that every time. All we want to do is take this player and drop it into our scene, and then we have, it's ready to go. It's already wired up. So if you had some AI with some scripts on them and animations and things, you could just kind of create this library of them. And then whenever you create a level, you can just drop in whatever you need. So the way I did that, again, is I clicked on player, I dragged player down into assets. You notice it's sort of lit up blue. It lets you know that it's a prefab now, that it's a sort of a set thing. What's nice is if we wanted to change, let's say we didn't like that jump sound, we could just change it down here and it would change it for all of our scenes. So if we already had 10 levels, 20 levels, we don't want to go through 20 levels and change a jump sound. We could just change it on this prefab we made, and then it would change inside of all of our scenes, which is really great. So if we go to File, we can go to New Scene, and if you hit Save, you can save it as level 2. So here is our level 2. We want to go to, and this is a great time, you can catch up now from here. If you go to plus, you can go to 2D Object Tile Map. You have this tile map here. When you click on Tile Map, you can go to Add Component and add Tile Map Collider 2D. This makes it so our player will collide with the tiles. What's nice is our tile palette is ready to go. And this is what I was talking about, where if we're creating a bunch of levels in the same style, we already have all these tiles here. And if we wanted to make a snow level or something, or fire level, we could make another palette of tiles that are for fire. So I'm going to very quickly sort of make another level, and I just want to make it really clear. Maybe I'll do this. So I'm going to just sort of make a, I don't know, some sort of quick level. Hit save. And what's nice is you can take the player here and you can just drag the player, whoops. You can just drag the drag the player up here. And then once you drag the player into the hierarchy, you can just sort of move this player around to where you want them to start. Maybe they start here. And so I dragged the player into the hierarchy. I clicked on the move tool and I moved them around. If you click on the camera, we need to add that camera, or you can just click here. If you take your camera controller, you can just drag this camera controller onto main camera. And if you hit save, this level is basically ready to go. So again, I went to Tile Map. I added the Tile Map Collider. I drew some tiles here. Let me do that. On main camera, I put the camera controller. This looks for the player. And I took our player and I dragged it on here. And I just kind of moved them. And like the background, if I click on camera, we can make that, instead of blue, I'll make this whatever color I had there. It looks like that's a little too far down. Let's my camera down here. Okay. So here's my next, if I hit play, I should be able to see how my player is already wired up, the jumping and the sound effects are all ready to go. If I fall, it will reload and put them back to where we started on this level. So if you hit save, make sure you hit save. We have like one more thing to do, and we'll have a very basic platformer-ish kind of thing in 2 hours. Anyone have any questions? The last thing that we need to do to show you is if I go to File and then Build Settings, we need to add, so Build Settings is what lets us build our game. You can see we can build for PC, Mac, Linux. standalone. We can build for iOS. We can build for Android. We could build for WebGL, PS4, Xbox One. You can also build for VR headsets, all this kind of stuff. It says scenes in build. So again, I went to File and then Build Settings, and it has scenes in build. I'm going to hit Add Open Scenes. This will add level 2. So this is our first scene, and this is our second scene. And then what will happen is, if we go back to level 1, so if I click on scenes, if I go back to sample scene here, this is our first level. If I run this, if I play through, now this is level 2. And you see that we could add more to the level and add another door and all that kind of stuff. And eventually you would add some moving platforms and AI and other things. But I wanted to kind of give you kind of an introduction and stuff like that to building this kind of a game. If you're curious, for instance, if I do File, Build Settings, if I hit Build, and I can go to Desktop and call this Platformer, this will actually build the game. It'll make something that I can run on my computer. So if you choose, you noticed in the beginning I did a demo and it was running inside of my browser. That's a WebGL build. So you can actually build for itch.io and some of those other platforms. You would just go to WebGL and hit switch and then build for WebGL, and you can upload to itch.io, which is really cool. So here, this is my game, this platformer, and you could change the icon and stuff. So if I run this, now you'll see that my game is here, and it's running in full screen on my computer like a real game kind of a thing. So you could give this file to your friend and they could play this right now. So I could, if I uploaded this and you had a Mac, for instance, you could play this, run this and play this. You don't need Unity. It's like a built program. It's a compiled program that you can run. So yeah, I could zip this up, send it to my friend. They can run it on their Mac. They don't need Unity. It's just a built, compiled thing. So when you do a build, you're actually compiling everything and putting everything together into a package that you can give to people. So if you guys want to hang around for 2 or 3 more minutes, I would love to show you how to do some background music. It's very easy to do. You don't need to do any coding, actually. It's going to be very simple. So you guys are cool hanging out for like 5 more minutes? Maybe not even, maybe 3? Yes? Okay. So what we're going to do is, inside of my scene, I am going to hit plus and create an empty game object. And I'm going to call this music. So now it's called music. And I'm going to add to music. I'm going to click add component and add an audio source. And you'll see there are some options here where it says mute, bypass. So play on wake means it will start playing instantly, and we want that. We want this to start playing right away. It says loop, so if you check this, it will loop the sound continuously. And here you can set the volume and some others. I'm going to bring the volume down so my background music isn't too loud or something like that. And then from there, we just need to find, this says audio clip. We can just go through audio and go through music. And again, you might see this like this. There's a little bar here. You can click and move this up. So if you hit play, let's hear what this sounds like. Oh, okay, oops. Not that. Pixel Land. Suspiciously familiar, but I think this kind of does the trick here. So if I click on music, I can drag this Pixelland audio clip onto here, and note because this says play on wake and this says loop, it will just work instantly. Again, I'm gonna bring the volume down. So now if I hit play, I don't know if you can hear that music playing. It's still too loud. So now I have music and I have some sound. I can get to the end of this level and I'm on the next level. Our sound, we don't have sound on this level yet, but we can add a different sound file for level 2 or that kind of thing as well. So I think that's our workshop. Oh, there's Jill. Jill magically appeared again, as she does.
I was dancing to the music.
Oh, that's great.
All
Thanks.
that I could hear.
That'll be so I think that's for today. Again, where was my... my email is cguida@pace.edu. You're all welcome to send me an email asking me questions about some of this stuff. I am a professor and I do have finals in the next week or so. So I might respond when that's done. Also, I wanted to let you know that I will be teaching a summer program of this same kind of stuff. It'll be a 2-week long kind of intensive thing that will be online, just like we did today, where I have Unity open and I'm coding and you're following me and stuff like that. You'll make your own games, kind of way further along than we did today. So I think we'll send out an email to you, and this is Jill. They can get I believe credits at Pace for that class and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, the summer program. Yep.
Yeah, so this is a summer program. You can get credits, college credits, which is cool. So if you liked what we did today and want more of that, we have that coming up in the middle of June or something like that. So we'll email some details.